Let's then get started. So welcome everybody. This is our second session, second meeting at the International Management and Multinationals Lab, which is one of the two labs in the International Business Center of Excellence. And today is the first time we have a guest speaker, and I'm very glad to have with us Dr. Vasil Taras, who is a colleague of mine for a long time, and a good friend that I've met in many occasions, many conferences, and we have worked together several times. He's going to talk today about the X-Culture project, some pedagogical aspects of it, also research aspect. He's also an editor in some journals. Perhaps he can also share some experience there. And if you have questions about that, that can also be part of the conversation. I'm going to briefly read his bio. Professor Vasil Taras is a professor of international business at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. He's the Vice President Administration of the Academy of International Business and the founder of the X-Culture project. He received his PhD in International HR and International Business from the University of Calgary in Canada, and his Master in Political Economy from the University of Texas at Dallas. His research and work revolve around cross-cultural and global virtual teams and experiential approaches to international business education and development. He's an associate editor at the Journal of International Management, International Journal of Cross-Cultural Management, European Journal of International Management, and Cross-Cultural Strategic Management, and also belongs to the editorial board member of the Journal of International Business Studies, Academy of Management Review, Journal of World Business.
Too many, and it takes so much time. I should probably drop some of those editorial posts. It's taken so much time, so
I can imagine. Thus has lived, worked, and studied in half a dozen countries, has experience as an academic, manager, entrepreneur, business consultant. He also has a TED Talk even. I don't know where he finds the time. His publications have appeared at the Journal of Applied Psychology, Journal of International Business Studies, Journal of International Management, Organizational Dynamics, and other respected outlets. He's the recipient of numerous research teaching awards for his work in international business. And as I said, he's a long-time colleague, good friend, one of the scholars I admire the most, and I've learned so much from my collaborations in so many projects with him. So I'm very glad and grateful he agreed to come today to talk to us about his project about global virtual teams.
Yep.
So, whenever you want.
Thank you, Alfredo. Thank you, everyone. So what I'll probably do then, give you a quick historic overview of how X-Culture came about and how it has been developing over these years. But my main interest is to see if any of you might be interested in some form of collaboration. So we do a lot of research, and by a lot, I mean a lot. So we have 8 or 9 dissertations defended by now based on X-Culture data, probably 50, 60 papers published based on X-Culture data, many more, like 20 at this time or so in development at this time. But also we do a lot of on the teaching side, a lot of on the entrepreneurial side. So if any of those interest you, please let me know and maybe we can work together. So, and I'll try to share here some slides just to sort of guide my presentation. But so in terms of X-Culture as the idea originally, the truth is it was never sort of a big idea that led to this project. It was the need to sort of teach international business in an interesting way at a university where many students perhaps don't have much international experience. So I came to UNCG 14 years ago, and I was tasked with teaching international business. And yes, most of the students obviously saw some people from other countries and some traveled overseas, but most of the time I found myself talking about international business, talking about how to do business with, for example, people from France, being different than doing business with people from the United States. And my students would kind of look at me and they believe me, but they don't fully understand, don't fully comprehend what I'm trying to tell them. I had a feeling that I was trying to teach them how to swim on a football field. You know, you have to get in the water to understand, you know, how swimming works. And same thing with international business. You have to have that international exposure to understand international business. And so the initial idea was extremely simple. I thought I would simply find one professor somewhere else, like Alfredo, maybe in France or in Spain at that time, And my students and his students would work in international teams. And by working in those international teams on any project, doesn't matter what they do, but they will deal with time zone differences, cultural differences, institutional differences. So they would be experiencing in real life what we are trying to teach them in the classroom. And so one day I simply sent out an email through the Academy of International Business saying that if you teach international business, if you would like to team up your students with my students, let me know. And so to my surprise, I got quite a few people who responded the very first day. And so the first time we did it, it was in 2010, so 12 years ago. We had 7 countries, 7 universities at that time, about 400 students. And so I'm very happy to see that all those 7 professors are still very much involved in Xculture. And so since then, the project has been growing and growing and growing. So this semester we have almost 7,000 students actually. So these numbers are a little bit outdated. So we have about 6.6 thousand students. They come from almost 200 universities. So here it says 160. So I think this semester we have 187 universities to be precise. And then depending on how you count the countries, so if you look at the locations of the universities, I think it's something like 43 countries this semester. But then if you look at the nationality of the students, it's basically close to 100, even more if you look at the country born. But then if you look at the home country of the students, that's approaching about 100 countries. All 6 continents represented, from Australia and Asia to Europe and Africa, the Americas. We have never had a participant from Antarctica. And so I'm trying to see if I can find someone at those polar stations. Maybe they can somehow participate so I can brag that we had all 7 continents represented. But so far we have all 6 continents where people live on a permanent basis represented in the project. And so the idea is extremely simple. So we place those students in global virtual teams. Usually there would be 6 or 7 students per team, and each one comes from a different country. And that's the idea. So the whole idea was that it will be students from different countries doing something together. And by working with people from different cultures, different time zones, different institutional environments, they sort of learn the challenges, but hopefully also the best practices of collaborating online. And so that when I'm talking about these challenges in the classroom, in my lectures, in my books, in my readings, the students say, oh, yeah, I experienced that in my team. And so in the first year or 2, we would give those students a very simple task, such as, if you had $1 million, what kind of business would you start? Write a business plan or something like that. But then several things started happening, and we kind of responded to them with new directions for the project. So one, we started getting a lot of inquiries from real businesses that were asking if they can use our students for all kinds of, basically to do research for them. The very first one, I believe, was in 2013. One of our professors was doing something with Mercedes-Benz buses and trucks divisions. And so they were trying to come up with some solutions to the marketing challenges they had. And they thought it would be a good idea to ask Xculture students for ideas, for creative solutions. And I thought that was a great task because it would make it more real, more having a real client with a real life challenge is much more interesting than a hypothetical business plan. And so that worked very well. We even went to a factory, Mercedes-Benz factory in Istanbul, where they make buses and trucks, and spent a few days there. Saw how they make them, the machines. Met with the top management team, met with the employees, had all the tours. Students presented their work. So that went very, very well. And so ever since, we would now have, like this semester, we have 15 client companies. And so each one comes from a different country, and each one has a different product. And so students can choose any of these clients and then work on that challenge. So we've had companies like, for example, this semester, Novabrink. So they make toys. It's a Brazilian company that makes toys. We've had a few French companies that make clothing, that make wine. We've had companies that make educational products and apps. We've had companies that make shoes. We had some, like American, for example, company Dart Drones, that is a network of private schools to teach drone operators to fly these, drones. So pilots, essentially drone pilots. So just about anything and everything you can think of. Companies that make snowmobiles, companies that make other transportation vehicles, gaming consoles, software companies, cryptocurrency mining companies, just about anything. This semester, for example, we have a company that makes adhesive tape, like duct tape, electrical tape for all kinds of products. So things like that. We even had once a company that made cow pregnancy tests. You know, when you are a rancher and when you have cows, you need to know when they're pregnant, and so they make the tests. And so this way the students can choose any company, but in addition to being a member of an international team, so in addition to experiencing international challenges, the students also have this business component. So essentially the students serve as business consultants to a real company with which they have webinars, they meet the company managers, founders, CEOs, and they listen about the company, you know, they have a presentation about the company business model and then the challenge. And then they spend this semester essentially being a consultant. So they do research, they interview potential employers, employees, potential customers, potential distributors, retailers, whatever the challenge might involve. Almost always the company would be, we've had some big ones like Mercedes-Benz, like Louis Vuitton, you know, companies that everybody knows, but we try to aim now more at medium-sized companies, with the logic being that a large company like Mercedes-Benz or Louis Vuitton, there is really not much our students can tell them that they already don't know. Whereas if it's a smaller company, one that has a product, maybe popular in one country, maybe in a region, but is now able and ready to scale up and expand into new markets, but doesn't have the expertise, the knowledge, the network to find the best markets, to do the research in multiple markets, to know the local culture, to know what kind of advertisement would work, what kind of slogans would work, what kind of packaging would work. So that's where our students come in very handy. And so as one client once said, working with Xculture students, it's like sending ants in all directions to look for food. So if somebody dropped a candy somewhere, one of those ants will, by chance, serendipitously sort of stumble upon it and bring it to the company. So it's not the individual ideas that count, it's the sheer volume, you know, number of students who do research for you that counts. So if one team tells you that you should be selling your product in Germany, yeah, I guess that's interesting. But if you have 500 teams working on your challenge, and of those 450 say that Germany is the best market, that probably means something. Likewise, if you ask students to do some research on potential distributors, well, maybe one team finds one potential distributor, another finds another. But when you have multiple, you know, sometimes hundreds of teams doing research for you, you have a pretty long list of, okay, well, we talked to this company, they want to sell your product. We talked to this company, this is the phone number they want you to call to talk to them. And so all of a sudden you have a nice compilation of results, leads, ideas, suggestions. So we've had even companies that would change their name because many students said that the name didn't sound well, you know, didn't sound right in English. So they had to, come up with a new name, and one of the teams suggested that name. So we had companies that changed the slogan, the logo, the color of the packaging, because they discovered that in a local culture, this color means something bad and you want to change it. So companies are happy, but also students are happy. So they are working for a real client. In many cases, by the way, the students get paid. So there is an aftermarket commission. In many cases, the students get internships. So we have a lot of cases when the client reads the report and says, oh, this is very interesting. So who wrote it? Can I talk to this person? And so in many cases, they would offer internships or even jobs. So it kind of works very well. And then, yes, at the end, we give students recommendation letters and certificates. So most of them do it as part of a course, normally international business, international marketing, international entrepreneurship, cross-cultural communication, or whatever that course might be. But in addition to getting the course grade mark, they also get a certificate and a recommendation letter. And we have a lot of stories, like literally hundreds of emails over the years that I received where the students would say that they go to a job interview and there are many other people waiting for the job interview, and students realize that they're not any special. Everyone went to college, everyone got good grades, everyone had maybe some summer internship, and they say, oh, and then I mention Xculture, and I show my certificate, and I say that I worked with people from like 6 different countries, and I had a real client, and here is my portfolio, so this is what we produced as a team. And then the interviewer says, oh, this is interesting. So you have international experience? Very good. So we want someone like you. And so before I know it, I got that job. So we've heard a lot of stories like that. So in many cases, we also, or clients also ask for sort of putting the ideas presented in the report to a real test. So they say, okay, well, you think that, let's say, Germany or France is the best market. Okay, you think that this would be the best retailer. Okay, you think this would be the best price and this would be the best slogan. Why don't you talk to that retailer and convince them to start selling our product? Basically, bring us a contract. And if you do, we will even pay you a commission on that contract. And so we have many students who try to do that. And we've had many stories where students were able to find a potential retailer, bring a letter of intent and then facilitate the contract. And so now there are many companies in this world that sell their products in new countries because ex-culture students kind of brought them together with the right people in that country and made it possible. This is obviously, sort of schematic representation, but we've done a lot of studies on the effectiveness of ex-culture. We even published a journal, several papers, in fact, but one was specifically on whether or not ex-culture works, published in the Academy of Management, Learning and Education. And so we looked at ex-culture students versus students taking the same course by the same professor, but without ex-culture. Like, for example, I teach multiple sections of the same course most of the semesters. And so I and several other professors would deliberately, randomly say, okay, in this section, you will do ex-culture. In this section, you will do some other project, domestic, no international collaboration. And so we found that when ex-culture is part of the project, teaching evaluations go up. So students are happier with the professor. They give the professor better evaluations at the end of the semester. Students also do better on the exams, on the tests, which is kind of strange because ex-culture doesn't really teach you per se. You still have to do the lectures and read the books, the textbook, but we think that it's the motivation that ex-culture provides, the sort of how much it highlights the importance of international business. So students kind of listen more attentively to the lectures, read the book more carefully, and as a result, we saw an improvement in the test scores. But then more importantly, we saw improvement in cultural intelligence from before to after, and compared to the control group. We saw an improved interest in working with people from other cultures, improved confidence in ability to work with people from other cultures. And then most importantly, we saw a change in behavior. So we've had a number of people who did ex-culture multiple times, some on their own sort of volition, on their own interest. So some just say, can I do it again just for fun? But we also had students who, for example, would be doing the Erasmus program in Europe. And so they took a course, let's say, for example, at the University, I don't know, Groningen in the Netherlands, and ex-culture was part of it. And then they go to France, for example, for a semester and take another business course. And it happens to be that it also has ex-culture. So they have to do it again. And so we noticed that when students do it the second time, all kinds of behaviors change. So they communicate more frequently. They're more likely to be the team leader. They have fewer conflicts. So all of a sudden, we see all kinds of improvements, which tells us that, yeah, they must have learned something the first time that prompts them to do things differently and show better results the second time. So we can say that, yes, we compared it to control groups, to before-after measures, and we see an improvement here. Now, a couple other things happened in the subsequent years. So originally, ex-culture was all about business students. But we've had pretty much from the very beginning, we had professors who would ask if their children can participate. So a professor would come to me and say, I have a child, 16 years old, very smart, goes to a, top school, and it will be applying to universities next year. Can maybe he participate in the project for the experience? And so I would say no for a long time because, there is a big difference between a university student and a child, a teenager. But then we thought, hey, maybe let's give it a try. So the first time we did it, we had something like 20 kids or maybe 30 kids. And all of them were children of our professors, including my own. So the first time we did it, I enrolled both of my children just to see how it works. And it actually went very well. So they had to learn, for example, how to use email, because many kids these days don't use email. They use all kinds of apps for communication. They had to learn how to write, how to do presentations, but then obviously and most importantly, they learned the concept of time zone differences. They learned how to schedule meetings online. They learned how to use Zoom. I guess now with pandemic, everybody knows how to use Zoom, but at that time it wasn't a big deal. But how would you use Dropbox, Google Docs, Slack, all those kinds of tools? So for most of the kids, that's a new thing. And so my kids, for example, would spend a lot of time talking on the phone, on Skype, I guess, with their team members about anything and everything. So not only about the project itself, but about other things. And so that was interesting. So for some kids, it's practicing English. For others, it's learning about other cultures. So very beneficial. And they actually do a pretty good job. So we have quite a few participants now, teenagers, hundreds, in fact, of them every semester. And so they do a pretty decent job, and they even sometimes become, are among the finalists for the best project. So some of them are very talented and can rival even MBA students. And then same thing with professionals, as we call them. So from the very beginning, we would have people who approach us and say, I'm not a student, but my friend is a student, and he told me about Xculture. And so this is cool. Can I apply? I will be applying for a new job soon, or for a promotion. I think it will look good on my resume. Can I maybe be one of your participants? And again, for a long time, we would say no, but then we thought, hey, maybe let's allow non-students to participate as well. And so now we have this professional track that are basically, adults who are not students who participate in Xculture. And so for the kids and for the professionals, we offer additional training before the project. So unlike university students who usually come in prepared, here we want to make sure so they have 4 weeks of training. So they have to take training on teamwork, training on online collaboration tools, things like that, cross-cultural communication. And then we place them on teams and they complete the project. Another thing that is also, not new anymore. So we just came back from one of these Xculture symposiums. And so this one was in Panama City in Florida, and it was the 10th anniversary. So we do it twice a year, and we've been doing it for 10 years. But so initially, some of our professors started bringing students with them to conferences to present their work, or maybe to just see how the conferences work. And so at some point, the Academy of International Business Southeast USA said, hey, if you bring those students anywhere, maybe let's have carve out a piece of program for them and have some special, career development workshops and things like that for them at this conference. And so we did, and have been doing it ever since, every year. Usually in the United States in the fall, and then somewhere else in the summer. And so at some point we were bringing so many of those students to these conferences that there was just not enough room. So we started organizing one that is self-standing Xculture symposium. So usually we would have about 50 students. We had something like 55 this time in the fall, and then we have about 150 students in the summer. So we had one, the last one was in Canada. Before that, there was one in Italy. Before that, it was one in Miami, kind of self-standing Xculture only event. And so we plan to do one in Poland next summer. And so again, that's like a week-long intensive training, workshops, meetings, presenting, competitions. So all about, this professional development and having some fun as well for the students. Many professors attend these events as well. And so many professors also, we have like a additional developmental program for the professors on the teaching side, on the research side, very beneficial. So we had quite a few this time as well. I think there was like 55 students, but there were about 26 Xculture professors who also came both to the conference, but also because of the Xculture symposium. Then another interesting development is the Xculture coaching program. So as I mentioned, we had some students who participated in Xculture multiple times. So they liked it, they wanted to do it again, and then again, and again. And so at the time when we had a student, there was a guy, Heinrich Feike. So he was from Austria, and he participated in Xculture something like 4 times in a row. And at some point I thought, hey, there is no point in asking him to do Xculture again. Maybe we should make him a coach to the new generation of Xculture students. So he's been now a member of the team many times. Now let's make him a coach to the teams so he can share his experience and wisdom with the new Xculture participants. And so the first time, I think we had something like 7 of those participants, but now we have a much larger program. So this semester we have something like 85 of them. And so usually about 400 or 500 people apply, but then they have to complete 16 training modules on things like how to provide effective feedback, how to resolve conflicts, how to organize instructional webinars and things like that. And so they complete all those training modules, they do the tests, and only those who pass all tests, they become the coaches. And so usually it's about 80 to 100 people who pass all the tests. And so for us, it's free help, because those students, they completed X-Culture, they completed additional training, so they can then help us run the program, so they can, as I said, resolve conflicts, provide feedback, do all kinds of webinars, training materials. So they're a huge help for us. But for them, this is a very, very valuable experience. Even seasoned managers usually don't have access to literally hundreds, because we have about 1,000 teams in a given semester. So here each coach is responsible for a large group of international teams. So they see what's going on in those teams. They often meet on a regular basis to, again, hear about maybe some challenges, provide solutions, help facilitate some conflict resolutions and things like that. So they basically are doing things that are very, very challenging, but also very developmental. So help them a lot when they apply for jobs, when they say, I've been a coach, and sometimes even for several semesters, and this is what I've done. So that's a very attractive set skill for potential employers. And then finally, research. When we did X-Culture originally, like the first semester or two, the only data we collected was peer evaluations. So we needed to evaluate students' performance so we can give them grades, marks, and so we needed peer evaluations for that reason. But then very soon we started thinking, hey, we have all these international global virtual teams. We can study why some teams do better than others, why some people are more likely to be team leaders than others. We need it both for administrative reasons. So if there is a problem, we need to know about it so we can fix it. But also we need to know what works, what doesn't, so we can improve the project. But while at it, why not publish some research? And so we started collecting a lot of data. So at this time we collect over 3,000 variables, like it's a gigantic data set. And so it's multi-level. So we have individual level data, team, university, country level data, multi-source. So we have self-reported data, we have peer evaluations, we have expert evaluations, we have organizational records, we have multi-method, so qualitative comments, quantitative data. It's longitudinal, so X-Culture goes on for about, it's a whole semester with everything, but it's about 8 weeks when they work in teams. So plus pre-project training and post-project presentations takes up the whole semester. But we have about 11 waves of data collection every semester. So many things are measured week after week, multiple waves of survey. And so we measure just about anything and everything that you can think of. Communication in the team, leadership in the team, conflicts in the team, cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence, IQ, cultural values. I mean, you name it. I mean, chances are we measured it, personality. So we track all kinds of things, all in a pursuit to understand, what works, what doesn't, how things affect team dynamics and performance. And so in addition to writing a lot of papers, we are very happy to share the data. So you don't have to be an X-Culture professor to get the data. We are always happy to collaborate with professors, with graduate students. So we have, over the years, next semester, we should hit 100,000 participants. So we are now at about 95,000 participants. And so we add about 6,000, 7,000 each semester. So I think we will have the 100,000 mark in January. And so it's been like tens of thousands of teams, almost 100,000 people. And we measured all kinds of things about them. So whatever research you want to do, we probably already have the data. But then importantly, we continue collecting data. So if you have an interesting research idea and you need access to data, we may be able to collect the data for you. And it's not only about teams. So we've done research on attitudes, on values. We even have published, including, I was the co-author on several of those papers, papers on robotics, like robots. So we had some professors who wanted to know how people in different cultures perceive take the idea of having robots, automated machines in their homes. And so they had some videos and some pictures, and they would basically ask, would you like something like that in your home? Or would you be comfortable in a robot like that in your home? And so they approached me, and I thought, okay, well, we can collect those data. So I was responsible for the data collection. We showed those videos and scenarios to the students. And then since we had so many different countries, all of a sudden we got paper a paper in essentially robotics as opposed to international business. But we did even that kind of stuff. And then all kinds of research related to education, psychology, sociology, and obviously business management teams. And so one important thing here when we talk about data and research, these are not only students. As I said, we also have professionals. So yes, it is mostly students, which is kind of a limitation, but not all students. And we have people of all ages. So most of them would be in like 20 something, maybe 30 something, but we have some people who are in their 40s, 50s, even 60s. And you can use work experience age as a covariate to see if there is a sort of maturation effect. So you can basically, even though this is a student sample, you have enough data to control for that. Likewise, if you want to study, for example, teams, the truth is that it's extremely difficult and possibly impossible to find good data on teams for the reason that not many teams exist out there, in the world that are similar in work design, work on the same project at the same time, and that you can observe or even do experiments on. Even if you have access to large companies like, I don't know, like Renault or Peugeot or whatever other big French companies there are, for example. Yes, they have teams, but most of those teams work on different things under different supervisors at different time. So if you're lucky, you can get access maybe to a couple of those, and even then they will not allow you to sort of conduct experiments. They may allow you to do some survey, but usually not much more. With Xculture, you have about 1,000 teams every semester. Different ages, different countries, different proficiency levels, different everything. And you can not only conduct surveys week after week after week, but we even embed experiments. Like we've done a lot of experimental studies where we wanted to see, for example, how having a discussion board, does it make a difference or not? How cash prizes make a difference. We would have a control group without the cash prize, and then the treatment group with the cash prize, and all kinds of things like that. So we have a lot of those data, and we can collect more of them. And moreover, a couple of times a year, we even bring some of our professors for a hackathon. Like, for example, we had one 2 months ago in Seattle. And so we rented the dormitories of the Seattle University. And so we stayed there for about a week, 8 days, I believe, total. And so we would just start in the morning. And so you start with the ideas for research, and then you move into data and then results. And so we would work for a few hours, then present what we have, get criticized by the rest of the group. We had about a dozen people there. Go work some more, present, get criticized, go work some more, present, criticize. So it takes usually about like 100 hours to produce a paper. But in a real life, we would work for a few hours today, then we take a little break, then we work for a few hours like a week later. So it takes you like a year to write a paper. Here we would have like 1 week when you do nothing else but just research from early in the morning to late at night. And then we would have some fun sometimes, like we had some sightseeing. This time we were the only people in the dormitory, so we would have like a barbecue at the end of the night, They had a nice grand piano in the lobby of the dormitory, plus one of our professors brought a guitar, so we had like karaoke. So we would work hard and then break, I have a break and then have some like karaoke and barbecue and then, work some more. So very, very productive, allows you to do a lot in a few days. So, but yeah, that's basically what we do. And so, if you decided to join us as a professor, your students will be happy. There will be a little extra work for you, but we do a lot of things centrally. So for us, we know that some professors, somebody gets sick, somebody maybe is not skilled yet enough to provide the necessary support for the students. Somebody perhaps, enrolled, but then maybe some busy things going on with research or work. So our coaches and our professors will take care of your students. As long as you give us the names in the beginning of the project, we will welcome them. We will keep you updated every week about how each one of your students are doing, and hopefully you will take that into account and work with them and help those who struggle if there are such students. But if not, if like you, God forbid, get hit by a truck on day one, we will still take care of your students. They will still be getting weekly feedback. If they encounter problems, we'll still help them. So we'll still take care of them and they will still be happy. So, but yeah, that's basically where we stand. And I'll probably stop here in case you have any questions, if you would like me to clarify any moments. But that's briefly what we do and where we came from and what our plans are.
Thank you, Vas. I don't know if there is any question. Of course, anyone feel free to ask directly or write in the chat. Also, in the meantime, you can maybe tell us a little bit about the journals where you are an editor,
Yes.
what they are, what kind of papers they're looking at.
Of course, yeah.
Mind if anyone is aiming to target them.
Yes, so I am on the editorial board of quite a few journals that you probably all know, such as Journal of International Business Studies, Journal of World Business, Academy of Management Review. But I'm more involved with Journal of International Management, where I've been an associate editor for a long time, and I process, I don't know, probably about 20 papers a year as an editor. Then European Journal of International Management, Cross-Cultural Strategic Management, and then for the last year, International Journal of Human Resource Management. So that's the journals where I would be processing the papers, basically, making the decisions, accept, reject, revise and resubmit and stuff like that. And so mostly the papers that make it to my desk so that I make decisions, usually they deal with either cross-cultural management or something related to teams in general or global virtual teams in particular. But usually it would be more kind of HR or B type of research. So it would be culture, teams, employees and organizations, maybe, so that kind of research. Yeah, it takes a lot of time, and occasionally I think if I should keep doing that, I mean, it's rewarding in the way that you meet new people. It helps a lot when you have to sort of judge work of others. It educates you too as to how you should write to maximize your chances. Because again, even if you're an editor, even at the journals where you are an editor, you still go through the same scrutiny, you still go through the same sort of review process. And it doesn't look like you get any sort of, preferential treatment. You still get a lot of rejections. You still have to deal with the reviewers. The editors still may not, accept your work, even if reviewers like it, the usual things. But by being on the other side of the barricades, so to speak, you kind of learn what are the sort of do's and don'ts are, and so what increases your chances. And so I think, if that's something you're considering doing, it will take a lot of time, but it will reward you in many ways. I also noticed that some journals started paying now. So it's not much, but like Journal of International Management pays, I believe it's $500. I'm not sure if it's a year or a semester, but occasionally there is a paycheck from them. So it doesn't really make much difference as far as money goes, but it's kind of nice that now they, even pay a little bit for your work. So yeah, but that's where we are. The challenge has been, I noticed that before COVID, at these kind of major journals, when you send out, let's say, if you invite like 4 people to do a review for you, usually 3, maybe 2 agree. Now it's like, I'll be honest with you, I send out a journal, a paper to a review, usually probably to like 7, 8, maybe even 10 reviewers, because I know out of that larger number, I'm lucky if I get 2. So sometimes you get 3, but in many cases you don't even get like 1, and then you have to go through this again. So it almost seems like people first used COVID as an excuse to not, do reviews, and then it just became a habit. So that's one of the challenges that I noticed lately. So therefore, Alfredo, my apology if I bother you too much with the review requests. It's harder and harder to find, good reviewers, and so sometimes I have to use my own network and contacts. If it's something
I
that
have to do the same many times.
Yeah. Actually, you did send me a couple too. So yeah. So now we're even. So yes.
Any generic tip what to do or what not to do in those journals, or any difference among the journals you work at? Something that okay, if you plan to target gym or cross-cultural, you can go this way, but if it's transpersonal, maybe not. Or any general tip about?
Yes, I'm trying. It's a good question, and I actually do have a lot to say here, and I'm trying to see how deep I need to go. So in terms of first differences, I noticed that at better journals, you not only get better papers, but they tend to be somewhat sort of better targeted. Like if you go to JIBS, where I have been invited a number of times to be the action editor, or like Journal of International Management. So at these journals, or International Journal of Human Resource Management, so they are sort of, more prestigious. people tend to submit sort of papers that are relatively good, and usually they do fit the sort of scope of the journal. If you go to sort of somewhat lesser known journals, so that's we're talking about journals with the impact factor of like 5, 6, 7, 8. If you go to something more like cross-cultural strategic management or Journal of European Journal of International Management, these are the impact factors of like 2, 2.5 maybe. Still very respectable, but not quite as elite. I noticed that they get a lot of sort of junk, so to speak. So often the papers would be not even about international business. In many cases, they're not properly formatted. So that's, sometimes a little annoying. But in terms of tips, how should I put it? And I don't know if other editors would agree with me, and I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say that. But the truth is that editors are usually looking for ways and reasons to reject your work. So we get a lot of submissions. I mean, if you go to like top journals like AMJ, JAP, JIBS, they accept like about 5, 6%, maybe 4%. So they reject, 90+%. But if you go to like, Journal of International Management, which is a respectable journal, so these guys accept maybe like 10, 15%. So they still reject most of the papers, and they get a lot of submissions, hundreds and hundreds every year, and publish only a couple dozen. And so, or, like a dozen per issue. So it may be, a few dozen over the year. And so they're kind of looking for ways to disqualify you. And so I even compiled almost like a presentation where I list things that signal to me as an editor that you are not an experienced researcher. So people, and even though in most of the cases we don't look at the names, we don't look at your tenure, we don't look at how senior you are, we look at the paper quality. But the truth is, if I know that you are an experienced researcher with a lot of years of, and a lot of publications, I'll probably take a closer look at your work and at least read it carefully before I reject it. But if I see that you're an amateur and that's probably your very first submission or second submission and you never published, I probably will pay a little bit less attention. So we'll not read it as attentively, and we'll sort of dismiss it faster if I see that you're not experienced. And so there are several red flags, so to speak, that signal to me that the person has never published before. Like, for example, things that I see that are red flags to me. Again, it's nothing against the paper itself, but I know that people who have multiple years of experience, they will not make those mistakes. Like, for example, using some fancy schmancy fonts. No, use Times New Roman 12, period, nothing else. Maybe Arial, but I wouldn't even get into Calibri because, Times New Roman 12, that's what everybody who is serious using. And if I see some sort of Galbatica, Schmatica, so I know now that's probably like a graduate student experimenting with the fonts. Second, even though now journals allow you to have single-spaced papers, the tradition is double-spaced. And yes, we don't need double-spaced anymore, but that's the tradition. So use double-spaced even if it's allowed single-spaced, because that signals to me, again, it must be someone new who doesn't know how the tradition works, so someone inexperienced. Tables and figures at the end. Again, most journals now allow you to put the figures and tables in the body of the text. But again, if you do that, I know that you don't have 10 years of experience or more, because if you do, you know that it's not how we do things. So things like that, you don't want to sort of signal that you haven't done it before. Like, don't use colors in your tables. Some people, for some reason, do. Use proper table formatting where you have only horizontal lines, you don't have the vertical lines, and you have only like 2 on the top and 1 at the bottom. So like little things like that, but it's usually very easy to see if the person hasn't done it before, and that immediately sends you sort of a wrong message. Referencing style, again, if you get too creative with that, I kind of know that you're not a serious researcher. And again, even though the idea is good, or it might be good, and I probably will still accept it, or at least, give you an R&R if the idea is good. But if you see a lot of these, red flags, you start thinking, well, it's probably like some graduate student just wrote some paper for a course and tries to publish it. So it definitely sort of sends a wrong message. So you don't want to kind of deal with, you want to be as standard as possible in your formatting so that you don't give away that you haven't done it before. So nothing super difficult, but that would be my tip number one. So be as respectful of the traditional format as possible, and don't try to be creative. So you're not submitting a work of art where the visuals matter. It has to be as dry as APA 6 formatted as possible, and so don't deviate from that formatting. If I'm not sure if that's a good sort of advice, if you think
it is good. It is good.
Yeah.
It is good. Yeah. We have a question from Eren.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hello, Vas. Nice to meet you, first of all. Thank you very much for the information, both regarding X-Culture project and the publication-related tips. These are quite important tips, I suppose. My question would be related with the X-Culture project itself, and as a researcher, I might be interested in using some of the data over there. I was wondering, to what extent would it be possible to track these individuals that who have participated in the project over time? So is it possible to track these people's careers like in a year or two and merge that data with the data that is already available from X-Culture project?
This is an excellent question. We actually did have that discussion just a few days ago at the Academy meeting. So it would be nice, but we haven't done it. But then at the same time, we have, so out of 90-something thousand who have participated so far, about 45,000 are on our mailing list. So they subscribed to receive updates from X-Culture. And occasionally we do reach out to them with, announcing new events, for example, or maybe even conducting some surveys. So if there was a very, very good, research proposal that requires, surveying those former participants, we should be able to reach tens of thousands of them. And I suppose, the response rate will be probably not 100%, but we should be able to get it from at least a few thousand former participants. But we have not done it. We do have many students who keep coming to these X-Culture symposia. So at least a few dozen that we, keep in a very close contact. And then some of them participate now in X-Culture as professors. They became professors. We had some that started companies and now participate as clients. So that we do have. But we don't have those data on the whole entire, cohort participation cohort. Do you have a specific study in mind, or you're just asking in principle if it's possible?
I'm basically asking in principle to see what kind of potential career-related outcomes that this X-Culture project or involvement in some kind of global virtual team might have impact on people's, let's say, promotions or involvement in certain types of work, etc. I mean, this idea just popped up to my mind. And
it would be a great study. As I said, we know that many do get jobs because of X-Culture. They send us their letters, and I suppose there are even more who never, told us. So, but otherwise, we don't have the sort of data as of now. It'd be interesting to do, but no, we haven't been able to track it, so that would be too difficult. Although, again, if there was an interesting specific study in mind, like, for example, if you wanted to know that, do former X-Culture participants more likely to pursue a career in a specific industry or something like that, we could technically reach out to all of those on our mailing list and then, get some responses. There will be some potential for the selection bias, but, potentially we can then look, like what industries are they in now at this time. Same thing, by the way, if I may complain a little bit here. So we amassed at some point quite a following on Facebook. So we have the X-Culture Facebook page. And so we reached about 250,000 followers in like 4 or 5 years when I started doing that. But then Facebook changed the algorithm. And so now every time I post on that page, it doesn't show, like by default, it shows it to only like maybe 1,000 people, and then keep sending me emails for a few days saying that like for only $25 more, we will show it to another 5,000 people. And so in a way, I don't know what percentage of those people who follow us on Facebook are our former participants, but since it's like 250,000, I imagine quite a few of them are former participants. And it used to be that when I needed a survey, I would just post an ad there and most of them would see it right away. Now Facebook got greedy, so we kind of lost that. We can still pay to reach them. And again, if somebody had a grant, we still have a way to contact them. But otherwise, it's not an easy proposition anymore.
If I have such an idea of like an idea of research, should I contact you directly?
Yes.
And send you a proposal?
Yeah, send me, you don't even need to spend too much time on, like fancy proposal. Just send me a quick email, tell me what you have in mind, and then we will take a look. And if it's something that we can sort of help with, if it's something that we can, do, I'll let you know, and then we can work on the particulars. In fact, if I can take a second here, so I'll go to the Xculture page. So if you go to Xculture and you click here for researchers, you will see here a page on the data. And you can even download here on the data page. You can even download the code books that will give you the actual list of all of the data, all of the variables that we have at the individual level, team level, university level, and the instructor. And so you can open it, and it will literally download the Excel file that will give you a preview of the actual data file. So right here, you can download it, and you'll see all whatever thousands of variables we have, like the actual question, the scale, the source, all of that. Likewise here, so this is the list of ongoing research projects. As you can see, there are quite a few of them. So I said 20, so it looks more like 40 or maybe even more. And so you can just open any of them, and you will see, which one did I open? I guess the fault lines or something like that. And so you would see here the description of the project that is going on. You will see who is responsible, in this case, Justin Kramer. If you have any questions, he says, yes, contact me, maybe we can work together. And so like a page summary description of the project, so you can see it here. Likewise, you can see here the published papers. I think I didn't list all of them, but there are enough listed here to give you an idea of kind of research has been published, and then more about this collaboration principles, how to request the data, research hackathon. But we generally try to keep it as simple as possible. So if you're interested, just send me an email. We are as interested in working with you as you might be interested in working with us. So therefore, we try to be very reasonable about these things.
Thanks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That list of ongoing studies needs to be updated, because the
some of them are.
The university rank study was published. We appeared in the Harvard Business Review even.
Published, yes, and some of them have been dormant for so long that I'm not even sure if we can still count them as.
I just noticed that one, and I wanted to brag a bit of appearing in the Harvard Business Review.
Yeah. Alfredo, 1 minute. So I found my list of red flags that I said. So other things that I noticed. So I talked about the tables, heavy tables. Inconsistent decimals. So if you have, like, in one table, some numbers have 2 decimals, some have 3 decimals, some use the 0.00 format, and others use 0.00. These inconsistencies sort of signal to me that you probably don't have the reflex, to spot those problems yet. Some professors or students, I guess, who submit papers to journals, they would give me printouts from SPSS directly. Like, instead of giving me the properly formatted result table, sometimes I see like a SPSS or Stata table. That's, again, that immediately tells me that the person is not, qualified. Low resolution charts, like if you have a diagram or picture, and if it's like very low resolution, again, I can show you one snapshot that I took from a recent paper that I was reviewing. So let me show you here. So it's like this one here. I'm not sure how well you can see it on your screen, but it was probably made like in one program and then snapshot in the again, that's not a professional, things like that. Same thing when you have a table and it's like a picture instead of text. So you had a table maybe in Excel or maybe in another Word file, and then you take a snapshot. I know some people do it to reduce the word count. So because tables take a lot of words, and if you exceed the word count, then you think if you put it as a picture, it will not count it. But it makes it hard to read, so it doesn't look very unprofessional. Another thing, if you have Excel graph charts, like if you have diagrams and they're created in Excel, like very basic Excel, nothing wrong with that, I guess. Why not? But again, if it's like very basic primitive type of graphics, it sort of sends tells you a little bit, doesn't send the right signal. So things like that. And then oddly or strangely enough, but yes, like your own signature. If you have like a Hotmail or Yahoo email, we normally want to see like .edu or whatever your university email is. And so if you're not affiliated with the university, at least try to have maybe Gmail or maybe your own personal, at, for example, Jimenez.com or something like that. So those are not expensive to get, because if you have like a Yahoo or Hotmail or even Gmail account, usually it tells us that maybe you're not a professional researcher affiliated with the university, and sort of doesn't send you the right, message. None of those are sort of problems with the paper per se, but if I see a lot of those, I can probably rightfully suspect that you haven't published many papers before. And if so, what are the chances that this one is good? And chances are it's not. And so I'm busy. I have a few papers almost every day that come my way and I need to read. And so if I see all those red flags, I'm like, yeah, probably not a good one. So you may not be given the same attention. Like if I see a famous name, for example, if I see a perfectly formatted paper, it's not going to help publish the paper, but at least I will read it more carefully. Like if I don't like it, I will think, well, maybe I'm missing something. Let me look closer. And if it's still bad, I'll still reject it, of course. But at the very least, I will give it a few more minutes before I make that decision. So
it has to look professional. It's funny because the list of things you said are things that I happen to say to my own students. It has to look professional, but then sometimes we forget our own advice.
And in this case, it's not even about. In this case, it's not even about professional, as in dress professional for a job interview, but rather signal that you know how to do it. So signal that you've done it so many times that you automatically catch those little things. Or like for example, I know you, Alfredo, I probably too. Like we wouldn't make some of these kind of obvious mistakes because if your chart is low resolution, you would immediately no, like you wouldn't even plug it in there to spot it later. You will generate a proper high resolution image. And if somebody does it, it tells me that they probably didn't have enough rejections in their life if they still do it. So that's the sort of the logic.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then we'll stop it here since there's also a department meeting immediately now. Thank you so much for sharing with us your
thank you for your attention, and yes,
all the 3 dimensions of your presentation. And everybody, I know Vas, he's always very glad to collaborate. He's hardworking. So if you have an idea, talk to him, and I'm sure we'll find a way to make it happen if possible.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Alfredo.
Thanks again, Vas.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.